Who doesn't want to be a part of something bigger than themselves? That attribute of Americans of coming together to create community is really an important attribute that's worth preserving. If you think there's someone from outside your community who's going to ride in on a white horse and solve all your problems and answer all your questions, he said you're wrong. Look around, look in the eyes of the people you're sitting next to, because you are going to save your community, no one else.
Welcome to Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. I'm Dave Martin. With me, as always, is my co-host and the president of the Iowa League of Cities, the mayor of Dubuque, Brad Cavanagh. Brad, nice to see you again.
Hello, Dave. How are you?
I'm good. Looking forward to hearing more about Iowa. And we have a very distinguished guest with us today. Would you please introduce her? You guys, I guess, have known each other for a long time. So please introduce our guest.
Yeah. So we have one of my very own Dubuquers here today with us. So we have Teri Goodmann. And Teri was most recently the Director of Strategic Partnerships for the city of Dubuque. And I invited Teri onto the show today because one of the first times that Teri and I ever traveled together to Washington, D.C., I remember getting out of a cab with Teri, and I stopped her and I said, Teri, you are very quickly becoming one of my favorite people that I have ever met, and I can't wait to work more with you. And I wanted to bring Teri onto this show because a lot of what I think about when I think about good government and leading Iowa is things that Teri has taught me. So I thought that it would be a good opportunity to be able to have a chat about what good government means to somebody like Teri, because she's been doing it for a very long time and doing it in very good ways. So Teri, welcome.
Thank you, Brad. Thanks for your very kind remarks. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to work with you and do what I do. I really am.
All right. So one of the things that we do on this show is we make Brad learn things. So he's talked to lots of mayors across the state, and he's picked up lots of tips. Is he a good learner? Is he a fast learner?
Absolutely. Incredibly fast learner.
All right. Well, good to have you. Now, you have listed some of her accomplishments. Here's the things that I've found out. You recently retired as the Assistant City Manager. Is that correct?
Retired as Assistant City Manager and followed up by the position as Director of Strategic Partnerships. Yes.
And you have had other positions, some of them national positions. I think at one point you were the National Capital Planning Commission for the city of Washington, correct?
Well, actually, I was appointed by President Biden to serve as chair of the Commission for National Capital Planning Commission, which is a federal agency that is under the Office of Management and Budget, and it oversees planning for not just the Metro DC area, but also for Virginia and Maryland and the adjoining counties, the adjacent counties to the district. So all federal lands, mostly interior and defense or Pentagon lands, and GSA.
And you also served on the Environmental Protection Agency's Local Government Advisory Committee, yes?
Yes. Mm-hmm. That was a committee that advises the administrator on environmental policy for cities and counties.
So you have had, you've worked in local government in the city of Dubuque. You've worked, you told me earlier, across the state, working on various campaigns, but you've also had federal appointments for the EPA and for the, the Washington, D.C. region. What have you learned in all your years of government experience?
Well, I think I have learned that community building is an honorable profession. And I think that, I take a lot of stock in de Tocqueville's book about America, when he visited in the 1830s and saw that this amazing thing happened in America where people joined together to help one another, whether it was forming a civic organization or building a barn together or building a school that was needed in an early American city. I think that attribute of Americans of coming together to create community is really an important attribute that's worth preserving. And that's what I like to do, help build community at all levels.
And I was going to say, do you see that more intensely at the local level than at the federal or national level or at the regional level? Where do you see that coming together?
I do think that that's largely at the local level where you have a lot of real tangible experiences, but then that happens largely because of elected officials who have inspiration, are inspirational and have a vision for the community, but also because there are city staff who are engaged, or in lieu of city staff, there are just community leaders and civic leaders that determine what their path is and then identify a way to achieve their goals and come together to deliver that. But it's also at the state level. Brad's leadership now as the league president, that's a group of mayors coming together saying, here's our vision for the state of Iowa as cities. And of course, NACO and the counties do the same thing. So it's this American spirit that wants to contribute to making as Martin Luther King called it, the beloved community. But that's also seen at the national level when I work on the NCPC or work with EPA, with all of these tribal leaders, but also city and county leaders across the country advising the administrator on policy. And it's everywhere. Our country is imbued with this, and there's an opportunity for everyone to participate and to be engaged and to engage others. So I'm passionate about it. I love it. I think it's worth devoting your life to.
I'm going to ask you both a question. I'm going to have Brad answer this first, and then you can chime in. How hard is it or how challenging is it really, I guess, to get this group of mayors together to share a vision and, to do that both in your state and then, Teri, if you can talk about how that comes together, nationally and regionally.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging. One thing about the league and leagues of cities throughout the country is mayors are a big part of it, but it's also council members and city clerks and city managers kind of all sitting around the table together. And I actually think that level of perspective that comes from those different viewpoints is actually a really important piece of that puzzle, because the diversity of thought that's required to be able to create a really high functioning community and really good government across the state, for example, only really is beneficial if you make sure that you're getting those people around the table to talk to each other. And I do think that it works really well. I think that those relationships that are formed, the people that come together to think about things from a little bit different perspective, I think is really helpful. So it's hard for sure. There are some really difficult times in conversations, and especially when we see things like, what we see in Iowa right now is there's not an agreement between what our state government is doing and what local governments are doing. We're at odds, I think, a little bit too often. And when we get that way, we need to form real relationships across those levels and across those boundaries to be able to do something about that and find a really helpful way forward. So it's difficult work, but I think it's definitely worth it.
Teri, what are your thoughts on bringing a group of people together who aren't always looking at the same end game?
A sister who was a teacher once in an alternative high school, and I called her because I was making plans to teach French and Spanish to grade school children before and after school as an enrichment activity, and I was nervous about that. And I said, Sue, I don't know what to do. I mean, what do I do? It's the first day. I don't know where to begin with all of the information I want to share. And she said, Teri, the goal of first day in my classroom is to make sure everyone sits down in a chair. I've always kept that in mind when we talk about finding common ground or a point of unity in a group and engaging people around that. So I would suggest what the mayor said is true. Right now, city mayors in the state of Iowa don't necessarily agree with the legislators on everything, but I think as Mayor Cavanagh has done and Mayor Buell before him, it's to find those common goals, and that's oftentimes challenging, but it's only done through engagement. You have to sit down together, and we have to find those common objectives and goals for the state of Iowa, for our communities, and find the shared value for both groups.
Mayor Cavanagh, you had an assistant city manager who has worked in politics around the state, but who also had federal appointments, was on numerous different boards and programs, the National Waterways Foundation, the America's Watershed Initiative. What does it mean to have someone like that working in your city as your assistant city manager?
It's a complete game changer. I mean, it really is. And I've said this to people and to Teri herself. When you look around the city of Dubuque, you see Teri's fingerprints on just about everything. I mean, anything that's been done in the last 20 years, you can see the work that she has done there. The biggest
Teri, are you accepting responsibility for all that?
No, it took a team. I'm just going to say that.
She doesn't like to.
Again, I'm very grateful, and it's not one person. That's the whole message.
It isn't.
All of us.
But there are some people there are some people like Teri who are extremely gifted at bringing people together and helping them to focus on the right things at the right time. And I see that now, so we still work with Teri. Somehow we've managed to keep her around just a little bit longer to help us with federal advocacy. And for instance, we have a Washington, D.C. fly-in that we do every single year with our chamber. So our Chamber of Commerce gets together with our city and we all go together. We took about 20 people this past month to Washington. And I always joke, you better have a good pair of shoes because Teri is going to run you ragged when you go to that city. And she absolutely does. But the really important thing that I see there, and the thing that I learned really quickly in this role, and I learned it from Teri, is the importance of managing that FaceTime and actually having real, genuine relationships with people when you go to Washington, when we go to Des Moines, and then even just here at home. You have to have those genuine relationships where you are really trying to find common ground to be able to work together. It is such an old school political skill that Teri has honed over decades, and she does it the right way. It's that it is getting together with people and talking about those things that are actually going to get things done. And when we sit down with, especially, like congressional staffers, for example, I think they're excited to be able to work with us because they see the motivation that we have to actually work together despite any sort of political differences that might be there or any sort of politics that might be in the news that day. It's really more about some of these projects and things we need to do and how do we get it done together. And for me, I think it's formed real genuine relationships in my role as mayor with the people that we have to work with in Washington and in Des Moines. And I think it is what helps us to get things done in a city like Dubuque, which it's not easy to get things done in a city like Dubuque. We're kind of out here on our own geographically. We border 2 other states and have to work with that sometimes. So those relationships matter greatly when we are trying to work as a government our size in a city our size.
One of the things we like to do on the show is share best practices. And I read somewhere, Teri, that you've taken in your time in the city of Dubuque, someone estimated you've taken in over $1 billion. How do you do that? And how do you instruct other locations, other cities, other counties to, work what you've done? I think I read also somewhere that in 2 years, you got $128 million in grants. How do you do it? Tell everybody.
Well, you don't do it alone. So that's flattering news coverage, but it's not true. It takes a team. It always does. And as I just want to comment on Brad's point about relationships, who doesn't want to be a part of something bigger than themselves? I think it's a human need. I think we all want to have personal relationships that result in good things. So what we do is we put together teams and we have objectives. We follow city council goals and priorities. We identify the priorities. We take time and the opportunity to look at different federal grant programs, but also private foundations that have the same goals and objectives as our city council. And we go after grants. And we have a grant writer in DC who's just a swell guy who worked with me years ago on the announcement, Bill Clinton's second inaugural, when he announced the American Heritage Rivers initiative. It turns out many years later, people come around in your life, and he and his partner write grants in DC. And so they help us with some of the more technical grants like DOT and EPA, some of those technical grant applications that our staff cannot cover. So as I said, it's a team. It's city staff. Sometimes it's our private partners. Sometimes it's businesses in the community. Sometimes it's, our elected officials and the whole team. So it takes a team, but it's identifying goals, creating a plan, engaging people, and delivering. And I never stop to count the dollars. You just look at these projects and say, oh my God, this is so great. This is what we need in the community. And as Brad said, we're the smallest of the 10 largest cities in the state of Iowa. So we don't have the resources many others do. We don't have federal or state offices in our community. We don't have a state university. So I think we have one human services office, and we do have one small outpost for the Wyaconda, the buoy tender for the Coast Guard. But we don't have a lot of we have to do it ourselves. And we have an incredible community of people, as the mayor can tell you.
But what I hear you saying, I'm interrupting you, I know, but what I'm hearing you saying here is that you have to look beyond your city. You have to look beyond your office. You have to look beyond City Hall, and you have to look at this and go, how can I bring more people into the fold so I can get what I need for my city, whether that's some outside state consultant, whether that's hooking up with someone in DC who works there, finding other grant writers. So it's really about compiling an entire team. Is that fair?
It goes back to these relationships that the mayor spoke about. Again, we don't live to raise money. We live to have human relationships, in my opinion. So I think we find groups that are also looking for the same outcomes that we're looking for as a city. So like the Mississippi River Cities and Towns, the America's Watershed Initiative, we can look for National League of Cities and Iowa League of Cities, and you join together in a group of people. You learn and you share information and you set goals and you find the resources that are going to point you in the right direction. So there are resources for communities like Dubuque and communities across the country to find and identify best practices and a way to adapt them in their community, to their community.
And Dave, I want to add to that real quick, because I think it's something that I think is lost in the discussion of running for offices like this a lot of the time. So what I hear a lot of people saying is sort of like, I think we have this sense of closing in on ourselves sometimes and not wanting to look outside to be able to solve bigger problems and do things. And I think sometimes when people think about local office and running for local seats, to serve on your city council or to serve as mayor or even on a board or commission like we have here in Dubuque, I think sometimes people they can come at that with a focus that is too inward facing, that is only thinking about the things that are right in front of us, right across the street, and not necessarily thinking about how the connections are made among levels of government and among relationships outside of our own cities to be able to do the work that needs to get done. Sometimes the best ideas you find are ideas that you literally steal from other places. And we joke about that in the U.S. Conference of Mayors. We talk about go ahead and steal our ideas all the time. If there's anybody that's got a good one, take it. We want to repeat as much as we can so we can all do these good things together in the places where we live. Too often, the focus is just about, not worrying about those things and doing only what matters at home. And I think that what really is lost is the fact that these connections matter, and the work that gets done outside of our cities to bring things back to our community. Those things are really important.
And we have to point out at some point here in this conversation that one of your friends you met as a young senator, became president. You and former President Biden were good friends, correct?
Absolutely. He and Joe are good friends of our family. My husband and I met them in 1987. We were visiting all the presidential candidates running for president in 87 that were in Iowa. And we clicked and became lifelong friends, and they're very fine people. And we've enjoyed their presence in our lives and are very proud of the contributions they've made to the country.
And that's got to help when you can call the vice president and go, can you help?
I want you to know something. It doesn't work that way. Unlike some transactional presidents that we've had. No, that's not how it works.
That's not how it works. Okay.
No, absolutely not. No. But I did ask the vice president if he could help me on a medal correction for a deceased war hero at Pearl Harbor, and that was Reverend Chaplain Schmidt. But he told me, Teri, there are a lot of federal agencies who don't like to receive phone calls from the White House. He said, but there is one in particular that the Department of, he said, can you guess which one it is? It doesn't like getting phone calls from the White House, no matter who's the president. Okay. And I said, okay, Department of Defense. He said, yeah. He said, I can certainly have you call the chief of chaplains, he said, who is a friend. But, from there, you're on your own. And actually, he said Senator Joni Ernst would be a better contact for you because of her position at the time as head of the Armed Services Committee.
So I want to ask you a question. You've just recently retired. I don't know. I think you've spent over 30 years or probably longer in public service. Why did you spend all this time, so many years, staying in public service, working for the government, when you probably had options to do other things outside and probably make more money?
Because I'm passionate about community building, and I'm an accidental tourist in this field. I came into it through my work at the River Museum, and I found that I love it. I found that I love making these relationships with people to build a better community for ourselves, a better state, and a better nation. There are ways we all contribute, but that's why.
You hear a lot about people saying, "Oh, government. There's no such thing as good government." What would you What would you tell those people, and especially young people who might want to consider a career in public service or in government?
I think it is one of the most honorable professions, whether, again, running for office. I've been around a lot of people who've run for office, and Brad can attest to that, and I cannot because I've not done that myself. But it's very honorable, and I think that we have to do this. That's what democracy is built upon. But also this idea, as de Tocqueville talked about it, democracy in America. He was stunned at how people would come together to help one another in communities to build a better community. So America has a long tradition of this, and I would suggest that it's a wonderful opportunity for people to get into to building better communities for each other. There's loads of room for improvement.
Brad, I've dominated the conversation. Your guest, your friend. What have we missed? What have we missed about her incredible time in government service?
Yeah, first of all, you didn't dominate the conversation, Dave. I think you're doing a pretty good job. So thanks for hosting as always.
Thank you.
I think we've talked about a lot of things, but Teri, there's one project that I know you're particularly proud of, and it's the Bee Branch watershed flood mitigation project that we've had. I joke about this in some ways because I've had very little to do with most of the pieces of this project. It's been a couple decades long project at this point. It's all about flood resilience and flood mitigation here in Dubuque. But I have presented as mayor on this project more than anything else. In fact, most recently, I presented in Canada about this at a flood conference in Quebec. The only presenter from the United States and the only English-speaking presenter during that conference. And it was because this project is so internationally known. As you think about that project, Teri, what is it you think you're most proud of in that particular regard? Because it is. It's a massive project. The $250 million, the most expensive project in Dubuque's history. Take us back a little bit and talk about that, because I think it is one of the biggest hallmarks of your legacy for sure.
Well, it's certainly the one that I take probably the most pride in. I will tell you that. And because, again, the city council set a priority. We had 50% of our community that was flooded for maybe 4 decades or more. And it was flooded because the infrastructure collecting rainwater in that part of town down by the Mississippi, the sewer system was overwhelmed, because of increased rain events, both frequency and amount of rainfall that we received in Dubuque. But everything runs off the bluffs. It was inundated for 40 years. Businesses, disinvestment in the neighborhoods occurred. Businesses left. People were left in homes, and these were moderate income homes, so that there wasn't an ability to constantly repair your home after these flooding events. And so the council prioritized replacing that. The idea was there were several options, but one option was to put 6 storm sewers in place of the 1 storm sewer, David. And that would mean taking out homes and making a big impact. The other was just to leave one big open sewer. Sometimes you see those in Arizona and dry states, where when the big rains come, they just get that water out as quickly as possible. That was it. Just have one big open storm sewer through the middle of these neighborhoods. And then the third option that came up was to daylight the creek, to build green infrastructure, do something innovative that could create, an asset for the community potentially. And we chose, city staff and the council chose the green infrastructure. Neighbors were scared to death that we were going to create a water hazard in their neighborhoods.
How long had this been a problem? Because I know nothing about this. How long had this been a problem? How long had this been an issue that people had to work on?
As rain events had increased. We started, the first master plan was done in 1999.
Okay.
And the work was completed. Well, actually, it's being completed right now with the gates and pumps that we just had the groundbreaking for this weekend. But 2017, it was functioning. It's a functioning system. It's fascinating. It's a feat of engineering that is breathtaking. But what we did is took the need to move water through these neighborhoods to prevent flooding in homes, and we made it into a linear park from the Mississippi River and mile into these poorest neighborhoods in town now. And what we're seeing is, communities know that money follows money. And when you make these kinds of major infrastructure improvements in communities, you will see people finding pride and people moving in and businesses returning, so that you see that kind of catalyst for community building. And what happened was the neighbors came out and told the city in a number of very high-powered, high-pressure meetings where the city staff stood. And that's why I said it takes a team. It certainly wasn't just me. I had a part of this work involved, but the manager, the city manager and staff, the engineers, had to come and listen to neighbors who were furious, that wanted to have a say in their neighborhoods and how this was going to be built and what it would serve, how it would serve them. So those were cathartic, and they were catalytic, they were transformative. It became the project that everyone rallied around, and the city slowly started to look for funding for this project. And sad to say, if there hadn't been a major flood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa in 2010, we may not have been able to see it completed. And that was a project that resulted in the local state senators in Cedar Rapids trying to get a program for flooding in the state of Iowa in legislation. And we piggybacked on that and amended the language a bit so that we were able to leverage $90 million from the state of Iowa. But that's another show.
Okay. So, Mr. Mayor, do I have to add the Bee Branch Creek Greenway hike into my list of Iowa things to do now?
You absolutely do. We've had people from all over the world come to see this thing, Dave. You need to get there.
All right.
We'll give you your turkey and dressing sandwich while you walk along.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we'll save that for after, I have a feeling. Well, it's a pleasure to have you with us, Teri. But we do want to ask you a few questions to get to the true heart of your Iowa soul. So tell me, you're in Dubuque. What makes Dubuque a real Iowa city?
Dubuque is a real Iowa city. I think it's the premier city in Iowa. It's beautiful. I love the fact that we're part of the driftless region where the glaciers missed us a million years ago or more than that, so that we're not flat like the rest of the Midwest. We have dramatic bluffs, 300, 400 feet high, that make our community very scenic. And we're right up over the banks of the Mississippi River. I think it's globally, I know it's globally significant as the driftless, but I think it's globally significant because of its beauty. So some people here say, don't tell anyone about Dubuque because we don't want them to find out. We have a great river that has incredible recreational opportunities, but it's also just sort of a zen place to go if you want to just walk up and look at it. We have incredible parks. We have architecture that was undisturbed because the interstate highway system missed us, which is probably a tough thing, for us economically, but it turned out to be really great for the city scenically. We have great architecture. So, and we have good people. I think we have neighbors and friends who do get involved in government. We have a great city council. So it's the people, the uniqueness of the place, the historicity here, and of course its proximity to Madison, Wisconsin, Chicago, Illinois, and St. Louis, in my opinion, Minneapolis.
Wow. All right. Well,
you kind of answered part of this there. Yeah, that was a great answer, by the way. But you kind of answered part of this. But when you think about good government, what does good government look like in Dubuque in particular?
Dubuque, I think we have a superior city council and mayor. I'm not just saying that. I think that I've been very fortunate to work over the past 25 years with really strong mayors and councils who have vision and engage the public and are transparent in their work. I think we have an astoundingly proficient and expert city manager who has years of experience, who also takes the community through processes and procedures that allow for greater engagement and support the city council. He supports the council by providing that talent. He's also a good manager, and we have great staff. People want to work here. People want to live here. It's right-sized. Some people say that our city is just the right size to implement big projects and big dreams. I don't know if that's the case or if it's the people. I think it's the people. There was a story years ago, David, I have to tell you, we were in the depths of depression. I'm sure the mayor's told you this. During the 1980s, we had lost 10% of population. We had the highest unemployment rate in the country. And at that time, I had just gone back to work after staying home 17 years with my kids. And one of the local civic organizations had invited the city manager of Duluth, Minnesota, to come and talk to us about their riverfront redevelopment, because we were looking for ways to rebuild our community after all the losses we had suffered. And this guy came and he told us everything they did up in Duluth. And we're like, I know everyone in the room telepathically was thinking, I was thinking, we have to hire this guy. He's really good. We need to bring him here so he can do that here. And as if he could understand us all and what we were thinking, he just stopped and he said, and oh, by the way, he said, if you think there's someone from outside your community who's going to ride in on a white horse and solve all your problems and answer all your questions, he said, you're wrong. Look around, look in the eyes of the people you're sitting next to, because you are going to save your community, no one else. And I think we all sat and we're like, oh. But I think for me, that was a trigger point. It was permission to become more engaged with my friends and colleagues, to begin to reimagine what Dubuque could be, and to also find ways to implement that. So that's probably the seeds of some of the origins of community building for me.
Wow. Okay. And then as a result of that, you went out and raised $1 billion. So we just talked about the B Branch Creek Greenway. Tell me something else that you've accomplished apparently your fingers are on in every pie in Dubuque, but tell me about a project you're pretty excited about that you were able to get accomplished.
Two others in particular. One is that I did work at the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium before I came to the city. And I'm very proud of that, because I think water and climate are essential challenges for our future. And this place teaches both environmental history, demonstrates environmental history and cultural history, so human history. But it also, it tells the story at the same time on parallel tracks, but it also challenges people to think about the future and what choices are going to be made about the future, specifically choices about the environment. So the river, for example, is a product of human choice. It could be considered an artifact because we've engineered the river. We've put flood walls up, we've put locks and dams in, etc. So I think that's one I'm extremely proud of. It has about 200,000 visitors annually, and it's open year round. It's a Smithsonian affiliate, and I think it's full of aquariums, of natural life, but it's also a great repository of human history on the entire Mississippi River and the rivers of America. Number two would be I'm very proud of the Millwork District. Our downtown that abutted these neighborhoods that were flooded had this huge barrier in between. It was 1 million square feet of empty buildings, just totally vacant buildings. It was the largest millworking district in America at the turn of the last century. So these are just vacant, 1 million square feet of vacant space. And the streets were still dirt because they were owned by the families that had owned those original millworking district. Okay. So it was a barrier to prosperity for everybody on that north end of town that was flooding. So we, through city council and a partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and the local, our community foundation, had an envision process where you envision 10 things you wanted to see in 10 years. And one of those things, people thought that the millwork district should become a housing kind of exciting, wonderful, attractive, authentic, textured housing for young people who were seeking jobs. And so we tackled that. And right now, I think there's been over maybe 150, 200 million put into that area, both federal grants, state grants, private sector grants. And it's a wonderful, Mayor, you describe it, but it's great housing. We have businesses that have moved down there. We have businesses that have moved to town. We have restaurants, we have bridal shops, we have a bank down there, financial institutions. And so we've reclaimed that. So now we are a connected community. So I think that barrier to prosperity, as we seek, communities that represent justice and equity and prosperity for all, we want to make sure that we don't have infrastructure barriers or other barriers. So I'm proud of that. I was, again, one of many who have worked on that project, but now it's quite a success.
So in this show, you have just expanded my list of places to visit in Iowa. Thanks to you.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot. Now I got to go to the Millwork District to get a beer. I have to spend an afternoon at the Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium. So, and I still haven't had a stuffing sandwich yet. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. We're going to have a blast.
I have
All right, we have our final question, Terry. I'm going to put you on the spot here. So just a quick one. What is your favorite place in Dubuque?
First, it's at home with my family. I just have to tell you that. I'm so comfortable here. We live on the edge of the woods. And then it would be the proximate woods to our home, which is the Mines of Spain, which is a state preserve. But it's where Julian Dubuque first moved in with Meskwaki and lived with them and settled Dubuque as a lead mining site on the upper Mississippi River. And he was a Canadian as well, fur trader. Yeah. But I love the Mines of Spain. I love the natural areas we have in Dubuque and Swiss Valley. So I like to go walk and hike in those places and just be out in nature. I would say those places are my favorite.
It's so fitting that you live right on the edge of the Mines of Spain, where our founder of our city settled, because you're such a part of Dubuque's history. So that's a great spot.
I'm becoming the little old lady from Dubuque, I'm afraid.
Somehow I doubt that.
I'm aging out, I think, here of my work, but I don't think I'll ever stop. But I do, and I do. I don't know.
Well, Teri, I have learned so much from you, so I really appreciate you coming on this show and sharing some of your wisdom and insight with us.
Brad, tell me if I'm wrong, but I have a feeling when you're in a meeting and Teri's there, and then she raises her hand or stands up to speak, everybody stops.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
And go, yep. Oh, what's she going to tell us now? What do we have to do? Take out your lists, get a pen ready. There's work to be done. Well, listen, Teri Goodmann, it is an absolute pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much for joining us on Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities, with my co-host and your mayor of Dubuque, Brad Cavanagh, also the Iowa League of Cities president. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for having us on. And Brad, thank you for expanding our general Iowa knowledge and hearing more about your city. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet, Dave. Thanks a lot.
David, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
That's our show. Thanks for listening. Join us again right here for the next episode of Leading Iowa, Good Government in Iowa Cities. Make sure you like us and share us with your friends. Follow us on Facebook. Leading Iowa is a Valley Park production in association with the Iowa League of Cities. The show is executive produced by Katie Wheeler and Brad Cavanagh for the Iowa League of Cities. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are executive producers for Valley Park Productions. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic.